Jojo's Bizarre Adventure is one of my favourite mangas and my absolute favourite anime. Part 1 of Jojo's is criminally underrated and overhated. I'm going to get into why with a completely different review format. In all my other videos, I've done a review of each individual volume and going over like what they do. But I'm just this time going to go over the characters, the story of the part, and why it's genuinely so overhated. So first up, the characters. The main character of this part is Jonathan Joestar. He is the first Jojo in the whole series for obvious reasons. He's on the first part. What do you expect? Jonathan is probably one of the worst Jojos, I'll be honest. He's probably the weakest thing about the part. Jonathan is essentially just a righteous boy that wins almost every single fight he does. He loses, one fight in the whole of these 3 volume series. It's a bit too easy for him, but I do like the fact that he's that righteous, but I also hate it. I want to explain, everything feels too easy, but it also feels like that's what it expects to be like. Because during the time Jojo was being published, that was basically the norm for manga. You would have Fist of the North Star, which inspired a whole new generation manga, which is right up to the left. You can see that white volume. And that inspired like Jojo and a bunch of other series that were around at the time. And Jojo essentially was the first one of them to break out the format. By part 2, it completely broke away. So Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. So, and also the other characters are William A. Zeppeli, Dio, who I'll be talking about last, and Speedwagon. We'll talk about him first. Speedwagon and Dio have probably become 2 of the biggest meme characters on the whole internet, like of any anime. Speedwagon, I've got to say more so. There are memes like Speedwagon Best Girl. The Stroheim meme with Speedwagon. There were just so many. Does that affect good characters? Yeah, he's probably one of the better characters in part 1. If I had to say my overall opinion on him, I'd say Jonathan Joestar gets a 7 out of 10 if you're being generous. If you're not, I'd say about a 6. Maybe a 5 if you're really critical. But, really, Speedwagon is probably a 9. If you want to be way too generous, it's a 10. And I'll get into why. He in the first fight seems really, really, like, powerful, even though he really is not. And that's kind of the point. He's sort of a comedic value character. He first appears in Volume 1. In literally the 8th chapter, I believe. I think it's the 8th, but it might be the 7th. It's one of those 2. Where Jonathan's looking for a cure for his dad's illness, which I will get into the story next. But all the characters in Jojo all serve a purpose in part 1. Too much of a purpose. But I wouldn't say it's my least favorite part. It'll be a while before I do my least favorite part, because it's the longest one. And it's the most popular one. So, Speedwagon is essentially the commentator of the group in the end. He's also a kind of a lunatic. But I gotta say that he's just so funny, honestly. He's a comedic character, and he's genuinely just so good. It's hard to explain what's relevant to the actual plot is. Think about it. There's literally no relevance to the plot. Think about it. Go on, I'll give you a moment. Think about the part 1 plot. Yeah, he does nothing. But he's just a genuinely entertaining character, and I think that makes up for it. I would still give him an 8 or a 9 out of 10. William A. Zeppeli is my personal favourite, but he's definitely not the best. There's a difference between favourite and best. Best is the definitive answer, while favourite is a matter of opinions. Favourite for me is Zeppeli, due to his, just generally how his design is, his characteristics, and generally also his fighting style. I can't say too much I like about him, I just like him a lot, honestly. He's just a fun character to watch. I'd prefer to have an OVA of the Zeppelis then instead of another Rohan OVA. I'm sorry, that would just be great. But there's probably the least to say about him. And the character I've got the most to say about him is the one and only Konoha. Yep, Dio, the other character that's been memed to hell. And everyone knows the clip of Konoha, the goodbye Jojo. Honestly, Jojo's just crazy, and the thing that first was the craziest thing in Jojo was Dio, honestly. Dio is something that epitomizes. Dio's like the main thing for the original universe of Jojo. I'd say out of the original universe of Jojo, he's the main antagonist. He's the full main antagonist in part 1. In part 2, due to him finding the mask and putting them on, it led to a giant war where the Pillar Men also came out. That was his doing in part 2. In part 3, he's back. In part 4, the arrow which he used has now been found out by the world, and they're all trying to stop him. Part 5, the main character is literally Giorno Giovanna, which is his son. And part 6, his other kids that come to fight. And also Poochie's. I honestly don't know much about Poochie because I haven't seen part 6 yet. I'm mainly an anime watcher. I don't read manga online, so I couldn't experience it. But Dio is just insane. He's got so many iconic clips. He's so maniacally evil with no resentment whatsoever. That's what mainly makes his character. But also his respect for Jonathan is also a big thing which most people think of when they think of Dio. Me, not so much, because I think that yeah, he definitely does have respect, but that doesn't matter too much in the long scheme of things. Except the fact he takes Jonathan's body at the end as a conclusion to part 1, but I'll get into all that. Right, now we're done with the characters. Let's get into the story. So the story of JoJo's part 1, if you want me to sum up very quickly for you, is Buff Guy gets his life destroyed by other weird buff guy who's definitely gay. He just seems gay. And he kills dog, kisses girlfriend, and then time skip. Blonde buff guy, which is Dio. I'll just say blonde buff guy Dio, and other buff guy is Jonathan. Blonde buff guy gets masked. Blonde buff guy gets turned into vampire. Other buff guy meets Speedwagon. Speedwagon and other buff guy fight blonde buff guy. Blonde buff guy dies. They meet Italian guy. The Italian guy tells them that blonde buff guy is not dead. They fight ancient warriors. They defeat ancient warriors, but Italian guy dies. They go to the blonde buff guy's castle, defeat him, and he's dead. Turns out blonde buff guy is alive and kills the other buff guy. That is essentially the story of part 1. If you want it more in depth, I'll do that for you now. And I'll do my normal format for this part. I'll go volume by volume explaining the story. So Jonathan Joestar is a kid who's grown up with a rich family his entire life. His mother died just when he was born though. So him and his father have been getting by together with his dog Danny. Time skip and Dario Brando when Jonathan's mother died, who is Dio's dad, saves George Joestar's life indirectly, which is Jonathan's dad, and becomes a friend of him, and he gets a favour towards him whenever he asks for it. Skip forward about 10 years and Dario Brando's dying, and he wants to send Dio to the Joestar house as his... I forgot the word. Request. I should say request. So Dio goes to live at the Joestar's house and he instantly kills Danny. First he kicks Danny, then he genuinely, all he wants to do is make Jonathan's life horrible so he can inherit the Joestar's fortune. He just messed up with Jonathan's life, like, entirely. And then just goes out to take the Joestar fortune from himself. And literally kisses Jonathan's girlfriend, and then the time skip happens. All this happens in the space of one episode of the anime and 6 chapters of manga. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? The time skip happens. Jonathan and Dio are friends, but they secretly actually hate each other, but they each act like friends. Jonathan his father still kind of hates Jonathan, his life's still kind of messed up. His father then gets ill because Dio's been poisoning him. Jonathan is then sent out to London. He goes looking for the cure to the illness that his father's been getting from Dio poisoning him. This is where we meet Speedwagon, aka the most evil character in the entire show. Then they end up finding who has the antidote, and Dio finds a mask owned by the Joestar family. Uses it on a random drunk passerby and turns him into a vampire. He then does it to himself during a fight with Jonathan. He then turns into a vampire, and after killing the dog, he thought, why not finish Jonathan's family off? He kills his dad. Dio just killed everyone Jonathan was close to, aside from Erina, who was his girlfriend that he kissed. Speaking of Erina, after Dio died to Jonathan, Erina was the one to heal Jonathan back up to full shape. Get him back in fighting shape. God damn it. He then goes out to train to get more powerful, and he meets Will A. Zeppeli. This guy right here, so we're on to Volume 2 content ever since Dio became a vampire, which means in Volume 2 content. Look, right here is the first panel where Dio is a vampire. And he literally just tells Jonathan straight up, your brother Dio is alive. Essentially, that's basically what happens. He just tells Jonathan that Dio's alive, and he needs to train more than he intended to beat him. So, yeah. Training arc. And then he meets back up with Speedwagon, and him and Zeppeli, Jonathan, Zeppeli, and Speedwagon both head to a small town where Dio's been spotted. They all head there, and they see Dio resurrecting the dead, because that's what zombies do. Zombies resurrect zombies in old fiction. And basically, they just try to attack Jonathan. They also meet a small boy who's trying to steal money from them. They mistake for a zombie for a little while. He steals their bags and runs away. Then finds out his little boy called Coco. There's a Poco. I just wanted the little boy. He's actually more important than Speedwagon. But he does one important thing for the plot. Then they fight Dio, but then he just dips out and summons Tarkus and Bruford. Oh, sorry, Blueford. The dub's weird, okay? The dub's weird. They fight, and Jonathan defeats Bruford. And then, I'm really bad at this recap stuff, I'm sorry guys. My brain just went blank. After the fight, Tarkus attacks and destroys the remainder of Bruford. Bruford was a respectable fighter, but Tarkus was just crazy. He was out for blood and nothing else. He attacks Jonathan, Speedwagon, and Zeppeli, and the little kid. They all get away, and Zeppeli and Jonathan gets caught. And Jonathan gets trapped in a chamber where they have to fight with chains around their necks and arms. Tarkus is almost about to defeat Jonathan. Then the little boy does he sneaks into the room through the vent and opens up the door, letting Zeppeli and Speedwagon in. Told you that little kid did something worthwhile. Zeppeli. We then get a backstory about Zeppeli where he knows how he's gonna die, and he knows this is the moment. This is essentially where Zeppeli accepts his fate and charging to save Jonathan's life. He saved Jonathan's life at the expense of his own. Zeppeli dies, and Jonathan defeats Tarkus. Zeppeli then passes all of his power onto Jonathan as they make their way to the final village of the story. Well, it was supposed to be, but it didn't survive, but whatever. They find Poke. It's just little kids. They find Poke. I'm gonna call him Poco because that's what I think it is. They find Poco's family, and they find out their sister's being captured by Dio. They then go charging into the castle, defeat some of his zombies, and charge straight towards Dio. We get a attack from, I forgot his name. Give me a moment. Dire. I didn't even find it. I just remembered. Dire. We get the Thunderclaps Splitter Attacker. And said it never fails. It didn't succeed properly a single time. And every time it was used. The thing that said in the anime and the manga is it's never failed once. It was only used twice and both times it failed. The first time Jonathan headbutted before he could use it. The second time Dio Stripe killed him. Yeah, he uses the crossbow attack. Dio freezes him and shatters him. He's dead. Jonathan and Dio then have a fight. Jonathan uses a sword given by Bluefoot, which I forgot to mention. God damn it. He attacks Dio and wins, knocking Dio's head off of his body and making it fall to the bottom of the castle. I forgot the zombie's name. God damn it, man, I'm an idiot. I should prepare more for stuff like this. Next time I might make a script. I hate how unprepared I am. This guy, the guy in that panel. He finds Dio's head at the bottom. He picks it up and puts it in a chamber so he will still survive. Then Jonathan and Arena get married and they head onto a train to the final bit of the part. On that train, the zombie that saved Dio turns everyone else into zombies. And the final fight ensues. All the zombies are attacking left and right. Jonathan and Arena runs into the basement of the ship. And Dio and the other zombie confronts them. I can't believe I forgot such a central character's name. The other zombie attacks Jonathan, attempting to end him painfully as possible. But Dio tells him to stop, saying he only has the utmost respect for Jonathan and wants him to die calmly and without pain. So, he attempts to carve his head, which is the least painful death apparently, because it's instant. And then he doesn't succeed as Jonathan attacks him, kills the other zombie by punching off his own head, and then throwing his body onto the boat's engine, I think it is. The boat starts to combust and it's about to be destroyed. Jonathan accepts his fate as he's been wounded throughout the fight. He holds on to Dio so Dio can't get away. Jonathan holds to Dio as Jonathan dies. Erina escapes with a baby they found, who turns out to be Lisa in part 2. And it seems like Dio's dead. That is the whole story of part 1. I did that one horribly. And now why it's underrated. Imagine you just say it because, like, oh, it's not that good. It's just too basic. But everything has to start somewhere. No, the rest of Jojo wouldn't exist if this hadn't have happened. Plus, this is the groundwork for everything. You say the part that debuts Dio and Speedwagon is bad. You say the part which has probably the most unique fighting for a while. We see ways that Jonathan and Dio fight, which is never done again. Here. And people say this is always bad. If this had happened nowadays, Jojo would never have been so popular. Maybe that part's true. But for the time, this is what you would call a good manga. Look at it for the time, not in modern day. Well, that's it. I'll see you next time. I'm not sure what I'll do. If I finish Dragon Ball in time, I'll review that next. I don't know if I'll be able to upload again next week. I missed last week, so I might try and do every other week. If you want to know why I missed last week, school started up, and I almost missed this week as well because I was ill yesterday. That's why I've been coughing a bit this video. Well, then I'm done, everybody. I'll see you next time. Just remember one thing for me. Kono Dioda!